Okay, rolling. Okay, rolling. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. And welcome back. Thanks for joining us at Live at 5. It's always a minor miracle when we pull it together live at 5. I never thought 155 episodes or so ago when I was launched this idea. Obviously none of us ever thought we'd still be in quarantine. We'd still be kind of avoiding each other's personal company, and likewise, I never thought I'd still be broadcasting these things. I really didn't. I thought it'd be a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, a month, and actually I've enjoyed it. And one of the fun things that I get to do as the manager of the Jewish Experience is, explore all of my creative hobbies and my little Michigassen. What does Michigassen mean? It's from the word Michigas. It's plural for Michigas, which is like a little insanity. So I have my little insanities, and this is definitely one of them, but it's certainly a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for joining. If you want to catch us on YouTube, go to the Jewish Experiences YouTube channel, and while you're there, please subscribe to that channel, and you can catch every episode of Live at 5 starting with, I think, Monday. Prior to that, if you want to see prior episodes, you can look back at the Jewish Experiences Facebook page, and we do appear there live Monday through Thursday at 5. And if you'd like to join us on Zoom, of course, where all the fun happens, that's 694-348-057, Monday through Thursday at Zoom. That's mountain time here. Now, this picture is not mountains. Today, another lovely photo. These folks decided to sit behind me during the show at sunset in a small bridge in New York. Also, another photo submitted by my daughter. There, if I get out of the way, you can sort of see the rest of it. It's really a lovely photo. And she's actually a semi-professional photographer. So I don't know if you need, photographic help, in order to come and take family photos or anything like that. She can do it. Before we get into the show today, I want to extend a mazel tov to my friends, Rabbi and Mrs. Nero, and they're on the wedding of their son Zev Nero. So they got married this week in the East Coast, and to a young lady from New York, and really a very lovely family who's been with us. Rabbi Nero's father is a Rabbi Nero, actually the chief rabbi of I think Denmark, and he himself was born and raised there, and it's his first language. You'd never know from his English, which is perfect. But I think if you ask him to, he can speak that language that sounds like you know that language. I think that's the language from the Muppet Show. When I grew up, there was the Swedish chef, maybe Swedish, no, Dutch, no, I don't know. It's one of those countries that the language sounds like that. His father was the chief rabbi there, and he is here in America. And in fact, in Denver. So mazel tov to them. I also want to wish a refuah shlema, wishes for a speedy recovery to my friend Ron Rubin, former board member of the Jewish Experience, dear friend for many, many years. And I think he had an eye surgery yesterday, I found out, which we hope he has a speedy recovery from, amongst all those that we named yesterday, and amongst all those that in the world and the Jewish people that need a recovery. We always couch our prayers for one in terms of the needs of the many. So we're never praying on behalf of just one person. We're always praying on behalf of that person's well-being and their needs, along with any other of our brethren who has a similar need. That's the way we always do that. A prayer on behalf of the community is much more powerful, and of course we care about everyone, and so we're not just davening for the needs of one individual, and we're rather couch those needs, or I should say we package those needs in our prayers along with the similar needs of anyone else in the community that needs likewise. I wanted to also just point out this tie today here. I always try to have a new tie for you every day on Live at 5. How about that one? This one I haven't worn in a while. A dear friend of mine who moved to Israel, and he decided he's only going to wear sleeveless white shirts without ties, as his formal attire going forwards. That's what they wear over there in some corners of Israel. No tie, short sleeve, sandals, and that's Shabbos attire. And he gave way to his tie collection. And I got like 200 ties, and they're all awesome. And look at this one. I mean, is that like amazing? I was thinking actually, if I would tie this to the parsha, I should wear it next week for the splitting of the sea. Doesn't it look like a splitting of the sea tie? Can't you just picture like the Jewish people in Moshe like walking across this tie? So anyway, I bring that to you for your viewing pleasure. Before we get too started, I wanted to thanks for that thumbs up there. I wanted to revisit one of the really challenging issues that we actually raised yesterday, which was what does the word schwung mean? So this was, if for those of you who are in the studio audience, you'll know there was a terribly dramatic discussion about the word schwung. I used it yesterday as if to say if you get stuck in a rut, like you're caught, with that inertia, that momentum, and everybody said, "What language is that? Is that a Hebrew word? Is that Yiddish? I don't know." And then we have our resident Yiddish expert said that's not a Yiddish word. So I was really stumped for a second there, and I thought maybe it was English. So my research has proven that in fact Schwung is a German word. Schwung, the word Schwung, and it comes from the word schwing, which means swing. I think schwingen like means swing, and it means momentum or habit, which is exactly how we use it. So thank God, you gotta love it when Siri comes up with evidence to prove you right. You just love that, right? So that's the word schwung. Spell it like you like. Put a C, silent C, not a C. Schvung from the word schwing, which I think in the English became swing. And you get in the swing of it, right? You get in the swing of it. So I said schwung. Okay, enough said. I also wanted to share with you that today in Jewish history is I always like to share, a little tidbit, interesting things that happened today throughout Jewish history. And basically, it all boils down to which country did we get kicked out of today? And I found that the Jews of Brazil were expelled many years ago. I didn't get the actual year when that took place, but when Portugal took the country of Brazil back from the Danish, they kicked out the Dutch and the Jews. And the Jews were expelled. So that's it does. You don't have to look too far back to find an expulsion of Jews from some country throughout the diaspora on pretty much any given day of the calendar. Just like to keep you abreast of the latest. Okay. Now, before we get too much further, also, I wanted to come up with a Parsha riddle for you, and this is and I really have to stretch myself to find you a Parsha riddle that you can't just Google the answer. Enough of that. Too easy. I don't want to make it too easy for you. This week's Parsha riddle is about the name of the Parsha. Now, the Parsha being that this week we're reading the third Parsha of the book of Exodus is the Parsha's bow, the word bow. Okay, and the word as in Bo El Paro. So the Parsha begins, and God is talking to Moses, and 7 of the plagues are already done, and we've got 3 plagues left. And God says to Moses, as he's done before, he says, "Do me a favor, go tell Pharaoh that enough is enough, and he should let the Jewish people go." So when that happens, as the song goes, "Let my people go." We're expecting that this is what Moshe is going to say, and God's going to say to Moshe, "Go speak to Pharaoh." But the problem is that Bo El Paro doesn't mean go to Pharaoh; it means come to Pharaoh, and it's bizarre, very strange. So there's your riddle. Why isn't this called Parshas Lech? Parshas Lech would be a much better name. The Torah should have said Lech El Paro, go to Pharaoh. That's what it really means to say. It doesn't mean come to Pharaoh. It means go to Pharaoh. So why does it use the word come? And in fact, that's the name of the Parsha, Bo. So that's your Parsha riddle. And we'll see if we can, tomorrow we'll get a bit of an answer to that one. And maybe you can send in your answers. And everybody who sends in a decent answer, as judged by the our team of Parsha Riddle judges, if you get above a 3.5 from the Russian judge, then you're going to win a prize. Now, what I really want to drill down to, for the first segment today for Live at 5, is the Midah of the week. Now, first of all, what's a Midah? We had a Midah of the week last week, and a Midah is a character trait. The word actually means measure. Measure of, as in the measure of a person. The Midah of a person is a character trait, as if to say, this is how we really measure people in life. This is what we really want to see greatness in terms of character, and so we measure people by their character, success and what they've achieved and how they've transformed and perfected themselves. So we're very cognizant about midos. In fact, if I had to describe what I think, the sort of the short description of a human being's effort that we should be making, our life on this planet, what it should be. The short description would be learn your Torah, learn the Torah, do the mitzvahs, and fix your midos. ABC. Those are your three jobs in life. So it's important. We have to talk about character traits, and we have to think about those things and work on them. So we're gonna have a mita of the week. Last week we had a mita. The last week's mita was savlanus, which we talked about tolerance. And this week we're going to introduce a new trait, a new mita, and that mita is the Hebrew word for it is gaiva. Now, gaiva is a fascinating word, which means it can mean pride. It can be associated with ego or pride of self, and generally speaking, this word is not in the positive. This is a negative character trait. There is a positive side to it, in the sense that we talk about God's being having like the pride of God or the greatness of God. He has greatness. He's a recognition of greatness. He is great, truly, and that's about the only place where this could make sense in the positive. Because for us, for human beings, we're trying to avoid gaiva. It's a trait that we try to dispense, to get rid of, to cleanse from our character. We don't want to be gaiva dick. That would be the way to say in Yiddish, to say like full of pride, to be full of pride, which would be a problem. And the gaiva that we're talking about this week is specifically relevant in the parsha because it's very much associated with Pharaoh. So we know that we're reading in the beginning of the book of Exodus, the story of the Exodus and the Jews getting out of Egypt and having Pharaoh let them go. And that's really that is, of course, the story. Pharaoh's unwillingness to let the Jewish people go is often thought of and referred to in terms of his problem. He couldn't let them go. And one of the reasons is his own gaiva. And today, of course, we don't know any Jewish, we don't know any world leaders that just leaving office that struggle with ego, because we don't have that today or any day. But it's a challenge, especially ego is really the challenge of the accomplished. The more accomplished a person is, the more they're going to struggle with their ego. That's the reality of the situation, because the more they could potentially think of themselves. And Pharaoh was, of course, the ruler of all of Egypt, and he was full of himself, and he couldn't possibly bear to be told what to do. No, he struggled with that. Now, it's not just this trait gaiva that we sort of think about and we read the parsha and the story of Pharaoh and his inability to accept God's instructions and to let the Jewish people go. We don't just think of it in terms of him, but it's also very relevant to the whole Passover Exodus experience, because matzah is the bread of humility, and leavened bread is like the bread of gaiva. Okay, so let's think about that for a second. What is it that differentiates between leavened and unleavened bread? A challah versus a matzah. So the challah is a nice, puffy, thick, spongy bread that is soft and chewy, and the matzah is a teeny little flat cracker thing, that's crunchy and thin. And the difference is it puffs. When something rises, when you make a dough, when you put flour and water together and you let them rise, it rises, it puffs up, it gets full of itself, if you will. And so, in the words, in the sort of the symbolism of our people, of our sages, we always think of the leavening in the bread as the ego. Because the leavening which puffs up the dough, that's like the ego that puffs up a person and makes us feel full of ourselves and like we're too big for our britches, like what we say goes, and everybody ought to do exactly what we think is right, and whatever is first and foremost on our agenda, that ought to be similarly on everybody's agenda first and foremost. That's what we think. That's natural. And the more accomplished we are, the more likely we are to struggle with that. Matzah, on the other hand, is when you take the leavening out of the dough. You squish it back down. You forget all that puffiness and that rising, and you take the ego out, and you get the bread of humility. And specifically when we're celebrating Passover, the Jewish people, in our, in part, that we escape the clutches of Pharaoh. We are all trying to escape the clutches of our inner Pharaoh, of our own inner gaiva, to try to quash that, to try to shrink that back down, and to try to minimize that. It's a critical component of the Exodus. Now, I'll tell you why it's related to the Exodus specifically. Why is this midah of all of the traits that we could work on, this trait? Why is this so fundamental? In the whole story of the Exodus, there's not only, the birth of the Jewish people, but there's also the most fundamental lessons for mankind about God. Who is God? What is God? What is he doing with us? What does he want from us, etc.? All the basics of the Torah's philosophy for life, the understanding that we have as human beings about God, really come from the Exodus. That was God's big classroom. He showed the all of, for once and for all of human history, he showed humanity that he exists, how he works, and he gave us 10 visual aids of the plagues. And then he split the sea for us as well. That was even bigger. He really showed it to us. He didn't want us to miss out. Understanding all of the basics, relating to God, understanding God properly. Now, Pharaoh was the one who was unable to accept the whole time that Pharaoh is being told, God said, let the Jewish people go. And Pharaoh's saying, who is God that I should let the Jewish people go? Who am I being told? Who is that? And why do I have to listen to him? I don't want to let the Jewish people go. I don't prefer to listen to God's instructions. I prefer to follow my own whim. And again, the trait of gaiva that Pharaoh embodies is antithetical to a person relating to God and getting to know God properly. It goes head to head. It butts heads. Our sages said that a person like that, an egotistical person, God says there's no room for you and me in one world. There's no room for us together. No, it contradicts. The more that a person is humble, like Moshe is described by the Torah as the humblest of all men. He's of all people ever in history, he was the most humble. He was the one who had the best relationship with God of any human being before or since, right? Humility is what enables us to relate to God properly. Ego blocks our ability. And so the battle of Moshe and Pharaoh for the birth of the Jewish people to accept, God as the ruler of the universe, that's the story of the Exodus. And each and every one of us, when we make this relevant to us, it's not just some narrative of history, some story, that is ready for live at 5, 3,300 years later on Zoom. It's a relevant classroom. And the way that we can really gain from it the best is to recognize the battle, the struggle. Gaiva versus humility. The Jewish people to relate to God versus Pharaoh's pushing us the other direction. And that's one of the big lessons of the matzah. We think of the matzah, we eat the matzah. At the time when the Jewish people are getting out of Egypt, you can't eat leavened bread. There's no room for that. There's no room for leavened bread on the Seder table. The Seder table is a place where we're talking about the fundamentals of the Jewish people and God. And there's no room for ego. There's no room for leavening. There's no challah there. There's matzah. There's only matzah. And it's true all year long, you need a little ego to get things done. Hopefully not too much gaiva. You need a little challah in your life. That's true. You don't have to eat matzah all year long. Can you imagine? The Gans Yar Pesach. Oy, you don't have to have matzah all year long. You could eat challah at other times. But that once a year, when we're sitting at the Seder and we're celebrating Passover and we're relating most directly to the birth of the Jewish people and the essential fundamentals of what God is, at that point, there's no room for gaiva. There's only matzah. Everybody got that? So that's the meat of the week is gaiva, and it's a negative trait, and we're going to try to avoid it. Springs from the parsha, that's the segment here too. Thank you for the studio audience there for telling me. I think that we got a year of when the Jews got kicked out of Brazil. It looks like 17th century. So thank you for my team. I have an expert team of crack researchers that behind the scenes correcting all my mistakes. Now for the next segment here, I wanted to share with you. We're also going to have a word of the day today because I think there's lots of important Hebrew words that we learn that are great to know. And the word of the day today is hashgacha. Hashgacha, as in the mashgiach. The word, the root of this word in Hebrew, lahashgiach, means oversight, to oversee something. Hashgacha is oversight. Now you may be familiar with this word. Maybe you're an expert in Hebrew terminology, and I'm not teaching this for the first time. And then you know that hashgacha means is often used where we say that there's some expert in kashrus overseeing our food. Right? That's the mashgiach, the one who does the supervision. He's doing your kosher supervision. So if you're at a catered event and there's a caterer, there's a mashgiach. The mashgiach is supervising to make sure that all of the myriad technical details of serving everyone kosher food are being carefully and meticulously observed in the kitchen. That's your mashgiach. And the word really also has to do with divine oversight, divine supervision. Because not only is the rabbi checking, doing hashgacha, he's doing supervision in the kitchen, but God is mashgiach over us. Ultimately, he watches over us from heaven to look after us and to take care of us and to check in on us in every bit of our needs. There's also in schools, in yeshivas, there's a certain role called the mashgiach, who is the supervisor of the students, particularly if they're younger students, and they're going to need to be supervised. And there, the goal is for their spiritual needs to be seen to, and they need a supervisor for that. And that's called that role is the mashgiach. You have like the rosh yeshiva, which would be the head of the yeshiva, or we might call him the dean. And then along with him would be a mashgiach, someone who's really hyper focused on the spiritual needs of the students of that yeshiva, and he oversees things. He's doing oversight. And so, along with that introduction of this word today, I wanted to talk about some of the really talented team of kosher food overseers that we have. We have one of the major organizations responsible for kosher food in the country, right here in Denver. It's been for many decades, and it's they're known by their little image, which they use to leave their mark on on food supervised by them. The scroll K. It's a little scroll. It's like a little Torah scroll with a little K in it. And our local kosher supervising agency, often called the VAD. The VAD is another good Hebrew word to know. Boy, you're loading up today. There's no extra charge. VAD is a word which means a group. They are the Vada Kashrus. They're the group of kosher supervisors called the Scroll K. That's our particular one. And you could see in Denver and really around the world, you could see foods with the little symbol, the Scroll K, to tell you that this team, this VAD of experts in kashrus, supervise the production of that food to make sure that you can eat it and be rest assured that you're eating it with and it's kosher. And they're amazing. I have personal friendships with them. Many of them individual, some for as many as like 2 decades. And they are an amazing team. Not only do they supervise all kinds of foods, but they provide a lot of resources to the community on many, many, many levels. And one of the things that they provide that I just received from them today was sometimes they'll give us a little guidelines to help us with the consumption of kosher food that doesn't necessarily need their supervision, but they give you some guidelines which are helpful. So let me give you a little insight into what I saw and the reason they sent it today. We know that today is the 7th of the month of Shvat, and we're just a little over a week away from the little minor holiday, the Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, which is a day in which we celebrate the fruits of the trees, the blessing of the fruits of the trees. We're going to talk about it more next week, and we're going to unpack it. Don't worry. But one of the things that people often like to do is to make a point of eating tree fruits that day. Some as many as, since it's the 15th of the month, 15 varieties of tree fruits. It's a lot of tree fruits. And is a custom to make a little Seder. Just like we have a Passover Seder, could have a Tu B'Shvat Seder. And that would give us, that would help us to get into the day. Well, it's a little bit of a, there's some Kabbalistic, benefit there for those who are so inclined. And again, we'll drill down next week. The challenge with eating many tree fruits is, unfortunately, that these tree fruits are frequently infested with bugs. Little creepy crawlies, tiny little parasites that live in the fruits. Very common. And the problem is that those little creepy crawlies are not kosher. As the Torah has guidelines for which animals we eat and which animals we don't eat, and we really don't eat bugs. There are very few exceptions. There are some grasshoppers that are kosher. I don't think we eat grasshoppers in America so much, so we don't really know. There are some, yes, that's true. The Torah itself lists certain species of grasshoppers which are kosher. And actually, there was a young lady that used to live in Denver. She was from Yemenite background, came from Israel. She was volunteering here in the community. And since she was from Yemen, I asked her, I said, in your family, have you ever, do they eat grasshoppers, And she said, yes. She said they have, in Yemen, they have the tradition and they do eat those things. And they know there's some of these things are kosher, some are not. The Torah tells you what to look for. But outside I know you're like cringing, like, kosher grasshoppers. But yes, in Yemen, apparently they still do. Now you're not encouraged to eat grasshoppers, no extra credit there. You don't have to, but you have to avoid eating the non-kosher grasshoppers and all the rest of the insect world, which are not kosher. And the problem with eating tree fruits is they are very frequently inhabited by non-kosher bugs. And so as a helpful, friendly resource, you can go to scrollk.org and you can now download a nice little guideline. Thank you for putting the link in there in the Zoom here. We've got a link in the chat. Thank you. And you can download a nice little guide to how to avoid eating bugs in your fruit. It's always important to do that all year long, but especially we get a reminder in advance of Tu B'Shvat, the tree fruit holiday, which we'll talk about next week on Live at 5. I'm looking forward to seeing you. That's it for today, folks. Have a healthy day and a holy day, and we'll see you tomorrow, God willing, on Live at 5.
Thank you, Rabbi.